Recording has started.
I was waiting to see who was going to break the silence to start the show. And you did.
We are here. We're live.
We're live.
Live
we
to
are
tape.
alive. It's been quite some time since we have had an episode of the podcast and one together. Welcome to the Longevity Lab, everyone. This is a iteration of the original podcast that Mackie and I started back in 2021. November 2021. It came
2020,
up.
actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought we did it after the pandemic.
We did it during the pandemic. We started it when we lived in Philly.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I'm confused.
November 2020.
I think of my life in one way, like pre-pandemic, and then pandemic started, and then my life went a completely different way. But the pandemic happened, I thought, in March of 2020. Oh, yeah. Yep. So then we started November of 2020. Holy shit.
And we moved in April 2021.
Whoa. That's trippy. So I've been at this for now over 3 years, putting podcasts out.
That's right. What? Although there were 0 episodes released in 2023.
There were 0 episodes, I know. It's been a really interesting year. And we'll talk a little bit about that if we have time. This podcast might actually turn into several podcasts. We were talking about maybe making it a 2 or 3 part series based on the fact that we have so much that we want to shoot the shit about and talk about. And ultimately, what I want this new podcast to be is much more relaxed, not as formal. I still want to have a lot of guests on the show that we get to interview, but I don't want to censor myself as much. And that was a big thing for me going into this when I started doing podcasting is I prepared a lot and I wanted it to, sound a certain way, and I wanted to, try to cultivate the episode in a certain way and present myself a certain way. And I feel like that actually was holding me back a lot from just having a good time on the show. And I just want to be able to be myself. And this last year in particular, I feel like I've made a lot of strides in just not giving a fuck anymore about who I am, what I believe, what I want to share with the world. And I think expressing ourselves, that's something that Mackie and I talk about a lot, is one of our big goals, because using your voice and fully expressing yourself is very freeing.
Definitely.
Oh, you can't express. See,
I'm proving a point.
This is part of why it's good for Mackie to be on the podcast too, because we definitely share some of these qualities. Like, I might be a little bit more loud and out there, but I'm not always speaking how I truly feel because I'm afraid of what other people will think. And then you are quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good to have you on the show. And we talked about, the dynamic on this podcast being that Mackie doesn't have to do a lot of talking if he doesn't feel like it. But I think that you'll come out of your shell more and more the more that you're on the show.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as things evolve and, as topics come up that I'm more interested in than others, I'll have more to say versus not, right? Just natural.
Speaking of topics, what are you more interested in when it comes to this show, The Longevity Lab, and what we're going to be talking about? And I'll tell you what I'm really passionate about.
Just selfishly, I think that's where everything begins, is from a selfish standpoint. But then you realize that there is a more altruistic viewpoint on it. But selfishly, when I turned 40 2 years ago, I didn't have a huge freak out moment. But for some reason, turning 42, just a couple months ago, then I was like, whoa, I'm firmly in my 40s now. I'm not just turning 40, and I'm not like a year from the 30s. And, what do I need to do now that's going to help me in the future to not just live longer? I don't really necessarily, sure, living longer is fine, but it's more about adding quality to the years and improving my health span. So there's obviously a lot that physically goes into that, but there's also the mental side of it. So if you're physically able to, go out on these adventures or go out on hikes, go out on runs, whatever you want to do, but you're not mentally enjoying it, there's a huge disconnect there. And I don't think that you can be truly well unless you've got both sides of the equation.
I didn't realize that you felt that way turning 42 versus when you were turning 40.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just one of those. It's.
And this birthday was kind of like uneventful in a way. I felt like.
I think that's why.
Should I
Because
have done something
no,
bigger?
no.
What did this?
Well,
and
we
this
went
is
to-
my brain. I'm like, what did we do for your birthday this year?
We went to Joshua Tree.
Oh yeah, so that was a nice trip.
But on the actual birthday, we didn't do much, which my birthday is right around Thanksgiving. We stayed in Colorado. We don't have much family or friends here, so.
We're friends. That's so sad.
Well, you know, we're newer to the area.
I feel like
It's
we're
fine.
making strides with that.
We are, yeah.
It is really hard to find a community, and that's part of what we want to build with having our company and doing this podcast. But I'm curious, when you're saying, you know, you can be physically there and able to do certain things, but you're not mentally there. What do you mean by the mental aspect of not being there?
Well, not necessarily not being there. That might be the wrong way to say it, but it's more so in the sense that if you don't have mental wellness, you don't feel good about yourself, you don't have completeness in the way you think about the world, then you're still not going to be happy. It doesn't matter how healthy you are. You know, they always talk about nobody really cares about their health until they get sick. And then all of a sudden it becomes the only thing that matters if you're going through some kind of illness or sickness. I think it can go the opposite way as well. If you do have your health, but you don't have the mental, like you don't feel good about yourself, or you don't feel that you're fully expressing yourself, you're not happy in your job, you're not happy in, you know, the way that you show up in the world, that also is just as bad as having bad health, physical health.
Yeah, I mean, and they're one and the same, right? It's like in Eastern philosophy, it's called, you know, body mind, mind body. It's that there is no separation from that it really is one and the same. And if you don't have your physical health, then your mental health is not going to be great. And if you don't have great mental health, then your physical health is not going to be great. So we can't really separate them.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm excited to see more and more of, that people are getting on board with that we really have to focus on mental, emotional health. And we have a lot of I was listening to Sadhguru on a podcast that I really love, which is Mayim Bialik has a really great podcast. And she had a 30-minute episode with Sadhguru that I highly recommend. We can link it in the show notes. I'll link other podcasts that I love and different videos that I watch. And on that episode, one of the things that he talked about is how in our current state, we have physical health down a lot more than we used to. Like, we don't have to worry so much about having enough food, having water, having, you know, warmth. You know, obviously in other parts of the world that is still a problem, but for the most part, those basic needs are taken care of. And because of that, we've started to focus much more on our mental side of things, and that we are much more in our head. So Sadhguru was talking about how we don't have to focus so much on our physical health anymore. And that used to be the priority, because we would be worried about, like, when is our next meal, right? How do we get shelter? We didn't have medicine. If something were to happen, you know, the chances of you surviving were not very high. and of course, that's not the case in every part of the world, but for the most part, it is in our Western civilization, which is what I'm referring to. And so now that we have those basic needs, it's kind of like the hierarchy of needs. You know, that need is met, but we have this other need that's really not being met, and that is this mental, emotional need. And there's so much emerging research and science coming out about our nervous system and our brain and how that affects our health overall into our physical health. And we have to really start paying attention to that. But it's quite overwhelming for people because we're still in this cycle of shame around feeling our feelings. And that is going to take some time, I think, for people to just get on board with and be comfortable with.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think people are starting to come around. Even in Dr. Peter Attia's book, Outlive, he has a whole section at the end, which he mentions in the book is probably just as important, if not more important, about mental health. he's got his whole practice around longevity and looking at the physical markers of aging. But he's got this section of the book where he's really come around over the last couple of years on looking at the mental side of things.
Yeah. And I mean, we have a very close relationship to how mental health affects physical health, and both my parents having passed away at a really young age, which is part of why I feel so passionate about coaching and helping people feel well and feel happy and supported and healthy. And, you look at my dad, he died at 54. He had a heart attack and he died of, clinical obesity. He had all the metabolic conditions. But really what my dad was dealing with was a mental health issue. And the side effect of his mental health issues is that he used alcohol and food, and he self-sabotaged himself until he basically, I believe it really was almost like a long suicide, and that what happened to him over time. And my mom, she also had mental health issues. She had complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is something that is just starting to be talked about, just how that affects your brain and your behaviors. And I highly encouraged my mom over the years to really work on her trauma, but it was very scary, and it is very scary. And that's something that I'm really passionate about talking about on this podcast, is how, when I say it is very scary, it doesn't actually have to be that scary when we face ourselves and we face our past. And it's worse when we try to sweep it under the rug and keep going in life because other things happen. And my mom, was an example of that. She, ate very poorly, didn't take care of her health, smoked, and ended up passing away from lung cancer when she was 65. I got to do the math. You'd think I would know exactly. Yeah, I think 64. No, 64. Yeah. So it was right. We were wondering if she was going to get to her 65th birthday. And that was this last year, guys. So this last year has been really intense and a big metamorphosis for myself and for Mackie. And definitely part of the reason why I didn't do any podcasting episodes is there was only so much that we could handle in this last year with my mom getting sick. She got diagnosed with cancer in January of 2023, and she passed away in May of 2023. So it was a really short period, an intense period. And Mackie and I were going back and forth from, New York to Colorado to spend time with her. And we were working with my brother to get her treatment in order. And it really illuminated our healthcare system. And we don't have to talk about that on this podcast. I know a lot of you guys know just how fucked up our system is. And especially when you don't have a lot of resources, which my mom, did not have, which is most of our country really trying to, put their hands into the government to say, I'm paying for healthcare, so I should get, treated properly and I should get the right care. And it doesn't always end up like that because there's just too many players involved that don't communicate with each other. So what I found myself doing was being like the connector of, okay, her oncologist has to talk to the radiologist, who has to talk to the primary, who has to talk to it was crazy because they're all separate entities that are, so overwhelmed themselves. And I don't blame any one of them for dropping the ball, but it was just such a wild experience to be so in it, to see just how much you have to be an advocate for yourself and your health. And I have known this for many years because I was exposed to alternative ways of thinking in healthcare from the time that I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is a phenomenal school, which was in New York City. Now they only do an online program. But that school really taught us about healthcare from the perspective of preventative healthcare, and teaching us about, the pharmaceutical industry and how, it is a big business and they don't always have everybody's best interests at heart. And everything is about making money. And of course, there are people who genuinely care that want to try to take care of people, but the way the systems are created, it's really hard to actually do that, even if the people in the system genuinely want to help.
Yeah, on an individual level, people are working hard to do everything that they can to help. But from just like a structural standpoint, just the fact that they're for-profit corporations means that they have to make more profit each and every quarter. Otherwise, their stock price goes down. So that's sort of at odds with actually helping people, is, making a profit.
Yeah. So, I mean, our eyes have been open to this for a long time. And it's one of the things that Mackie and I really bonded over when we first met each other, which was we're going to be going on 13 years, baby, in March. Lucky 13. Yes, Jinx. You owe me a Diet Coke, which we do indulge in, just so you all know. We're not perfect over here. We
love Diet Coke.
We do love a good Diet Coke. But yeah, something Mackie and I really bonded over when we first met was just like seeing beyond the matrix. Like, what is happening? Why is everybody so fucked up and sick and unhealthy and miserable? And this is the majority of people. And that is not what we stand for. And we were like, we need to take a stand against this and figure out how we can help people be happier and healthier, which is all about advocating for yourself and like understanding these things and not just putting your hands in quote unquote experts, or your lives rather in experts' hands. I mean, there are people who are very knowledgeable and can help you, but you also need to have the knowledge for yourself too.
Yeah, you should be able to have that knowledge so that way you can take an active role in working with the experts, and asking the right questions and understanding, because, if they don't have a full picture of what's actually going on, they might not be able to help as much. And if you're knowledgeable and you're able to advocate for yourself and talk about what's going on in a little bit more knowledgeable way, then you can help yourself even better.
Or have somebody do that for you, which is what I was trying to do with my mom, because she really wasn't capable of asking those questions. And, when you're really not well, you have to get a team to help and get people around you to try and support. But, that was this last year for Mackie and I was just really intense. And I'm still processing the grief. I will be processing the grief ongoing. It actually wasn't until very recently that I started feeling sadness and real grief. I think, it's different for everyone, but when you have someone like your parent pass away, it's shocking in the beginning and it doesn't feel real, and you kind of just go about your life. And this is another thing that I've really noticed is we don't have the time and space in the way that our culture is set up to really grieve properly and to let somebody have that ability, because everything is like what is shoved down our throats so much is that you have to just like push really hard and keep going and strive to be better, best. And that is what's going to keep you on top of the game. I think that's this very like masculine business mentality that then leaks into everything in our life. And I've noticed that brainwashing for myself, and it really does not serve. It doesn't serve you, and it makes you ill. I have felt recently like my cup has runneth over and that I cannot contain my emotions anymore. And what I've noticed, and Mackie can attest to this, is that I've been really like snippy and short, and my like tolerance for things is really low, and my personality was starting to change. And I had to really ask myself, like, what is going on? Like, is this hormones? Is this diet? Is this I'm not happy with my life? Like, just kind of running through a checklist. And I'm a Virgo sun Scorpio moon and rising, y'all. So I'm very, very much in my head and super analytical and always trying to like metamorphosize everything and create create light out of darkness, which is one of my skill sets. And it's beautiful. But that again requires me to a lot of times be in darkness. And I've been in the shadow for a while now. You could call it a little bit of a dark night of the soul. I don't know if I'm like quite there. I feel like I could easily like ease into a real dark night of the soul right now, Mackie. But I think it's grief. Long story short, I think all of the symptoms I'm experiencing, like forgetfulness. I notice I'll stare out into space and just be so overwhelmed by a million thoughts that I just can't move or focus. And, too many decisions feel so overwhelming. A lot of paralysis by analysis is happening and mood changes. My sleep is affected. And what I really think is happening when I ask my soul, like what's going on, is I am really sad and I lost my mom. And that is such an anchor for us. No matter the relationships that we've had with our parents, and I had a very complicated one. For those of you new to the show, I lost my dad when I was 16. I had to live out on my own by the age of 17. I went and got an apartment myself. I started my career. My mom has had mental health issues, most of my life, so she wasn't really present as a motherly figure for me, but we still had a relationship, even if it was one that had a ton of boundaries and was really complicated. But I have memories of my mom when I'm little, when she was a present mom, that were really special. And I think, I honor those memories, and I'm so grateful and thankful that I have those memories. And I have a lot of forgiveness in my heart for how she wasn't the mom that I wanted or deserved. And I also miss having a mom. Like, even if she wasn't the mom that I would envy that my friends had, like the mom that they could call and rely on and, have dinners with and trips with and always feel supported. Even if my mom was not able to be that mom, she was still the woman who birthed me and the reason I am on this earth. And there's a really complicated relationship there in my own psyche, figuring out how am I supposed to grieve someone that was also quite a burden in my life, and yet I'm feeling so sad. And it's like both things can exist. Even if somebody wronged you or you felt like they were, a burden in some way, you can still love them so much, have so much unconditional love and compassion and empathy for them, like I did with my mom, and miss the fact that I will never be able to spend time with her again or call her on our little 5-minute chit chats that would annoy the shit out of me, so I've been going through that. It's been really intense. I'm going through it right now as I'm talking to you guys. I am really trying to support myself mentally and emotionally. One of the things that a very close girlfriend of mine shared with me when I told her that I felt really called to start up the podcast again is she said, Juliet, I think that you have such a powerful voice and perspective to share with people because you have a balance of this masculine and feminine energy. And for those of, wondering kind of what that is, the masculine is this container that allows for there to be structure and order. And the feminine is a very creative, chaotic, messy, emotional part of us. And we, ideally we have both and they're balanced. And oftentimes we are operating, I would say more than now, we're operating from the masculine, especially in our Western culture. Because again, we're very much like, let's drive, let's strive, let's make that money, honey. Like that is what we are told is what's going to fulfill us. Then there's this whole other side that is really so special and beautiful and human. And, the feminine is also, you see it in right now in nature. It's winter. It's this energy of hibernation and introspection and the cold and the moon. Those are all feminine energies. And water is feminine, which is really can be scary and chaotic. But I agree with her that I have a perspective on life that is very balanced in both that masculine and feminine, that you cannot feel like you are in fulfillment and in purpose if you don't have both of those things operating in a healthy way. If you are too operating from your masculine and always about results and constantly climbing that ladder, you will never feel fulfilled. That hole is never going to be filled, right? And if you are too in your feminine and you're all about emotions all the time and your feelings and, I'm just going to go with how I'm feeling today. And you know what? I'm just feeling like I need to rest, and no, I don't need to exercise today. That's not good either. You need to have this combination of both things. So when I told her I was going to do this podcast again, she was like, you really, really have that perspective that people could benefit from hearing. And so I want to share with you guys like the messy, the ugly, all of it, and let myself be myself more than I've ever let myself be myself, which is really fucking scary, guys. It's really scary to even share with you that I'm not doing great right now. Like I'm not. I messaged my friend the other day and I was like, hey, so it's really even hard for me to say that I'm not okay because I don't feel okay. And I'm always trying to be the teacher and the guide and the leader. And that doesn't leave a lot of room for me to be vulnerable and not be okay.
All of those things make sense. And I also think that there's an element to starting back up with the podcast. We started it in 2020, just before we moved to Colorado. And here we are now, starting it up in 2024, just as we're launching and growing UltraLife.
Just so you know, the aliens are supposed to come in like 2024. When we started the WooCast and we were talking to so many different, very woo-woo people and psychics and channelers and people who connect to extraterrestrials, there was a very loud message from a lot of them that said 2024 was going to be the year of aliens. So.
I've heard 2026 now, so they're pushing it back.
Okay. It's kind of like 2012, the end of the world, right?
Right.
Yeah, there's always going to be these dates. I mean, I'm here for the aliens. I'm ready to connect with
the interdimensional
with
beings. They're here.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we're just in such a different place. We're figuring ourselves out, guys. Like, I'm 35, Mackie's 42. I saw the greatest meme the other day, and I wanted to put it as my background on my phone, Mackie, even though it is beautiful Martha cat, and I'm a little bit like torn about putting this background in place of Martha. But this background, I think, could help guide me and anybody else listening. And it says, "Stop worrying, you dramatic bitch. No one knows what the fuck they're doing." Ain't that the truth?
It's true.
Like, we don't know what the fuck we're doing.
No, and that was like, I do go back to the time, when I was a kid, I would be like, oh, I can't wait to be 18 because when I'm 18, I'll have all the answers just like all the other adults. And then, you hit 18, you're like, oh, you're still a kid. And then you hit 25 and you're like, well, I still don't have the answers. And you hit 30 and you're like, oh yeah, I guess nobody has answers. And it's just,
and now you're 40.
It's one of those things. As you get older, you realize just how much nobody really knows what's going on.
Yeah, I think I'm always plagued with, in Gretchen Rubin's book, she talks about, the questioner. And that's definitely me. I'm always the questioner. I want to know why, as if that will give me some certainty to feel better, right? So as you guys were listening to my thought processes around how my mood is changing lately, and I feel I'm literally analyzing it, and I'm asking myself, why? And so, I've come to the conclusion that it's grief. That's the why. But I also know that it's really important to let go of having that certainty and that finality in things, because it really doesn't exist in life. You can
Yeah.
ask ourselves why, why, why is the sky blue, right? Yeah. Okay. We have the scientific reasoning behind that. But so many things we really don't have the answers
But
to.
why do cats exist?
Yeah.
There's no answer to that.
Why they exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do we exist?
Why do we exist? Why anything?
Yeah.
You could ask these kinds of questions and you're never gonna have an answer to it.
Yeah. And that really causes me a lot of anxiety. And I'm working through that, because the more that I let go and it just is, the more freedom you can actually have and embrace that life is just this really wild ride that we're on, and we don't really know why we're here. All of us want to know our purpose, and often that's really entangled with like what we're supposed to do for a living, which is so dumb if you think about it. Because like all these jobs and things that we have now were created not that long ago even.
Yeah. That was over the holiday break. I was watching 1883, and it's so wild to think, these people were moving out into the Wild West where nothing existed. They're going to go start a farm, but there's no store to buy, supplies when they get there. They're just going out into the wild, literally. And that's 1883. So that's only a few people away from us, right? So if that person was alive in 1883, they could have had kids who lived into the 40s, and they could have had kids that lived into the 80s, and, here we are today. It's not that long ago. Which
is also really crazy to think the technology and how fast things are shifting and changing.
Yeah.
And going from, this very, like you said, wild culture where we have to fend for ourselves and just take all of these risks all the time to survive. Like I was talking about earlier with what Sadhguru was saying, was we had to focus on our physical so much just to survive. Now we're in this very mental state where we're really focused on our consciousness and more of the ethereal side of the human existence.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone from that survival, that low, like the bottom rung of the hierarchy of needs, and moved up fairly quickly within a few generations.
How? Isn't that weird? Like, how did we go from that to where we are now? And then what's even scarier to me, maybe it should be exciting, but it's just unknown, so it's a little scary, is like what's going to be happening in 10 years or 20 years or 50 years. As far as now, we have all this AI stuff that is leading our lives and is so quick and so much smarter than we are.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, with AI, now you have computers that are able to think of things for themselves. They're obviously not there yet, but as this we're pretty close to it, where in the past, the humans had to think of, okay, here's what we got to teach the computer what to do. But some of these AI models now, they're actually thinking outside the box and doing things that were not necessarily programmed by the developers. One of the things I learned recently in ChatGPT, when they originally created it, they didn't really know all of the things that it could do. It just takes us playing with it and, hey, we can make it do this. And, they had a ChatGPT model talking to a human Postmate, the app Postmates, and they were trying to get him to the Postmate person to help him, help the AI, because it couldn't read the CAPTCHA image. It couldn't find all the motorcycles. It couldn't do that. So it told the person, he said, "Hey, I'm a visually impaired person."
It told it that it was visually impaired. Like it didn't say that like I'm ChatGPT.
No, because it
made
knew
himself a person.
It knew that he couldn't tell the person that was a bot.
Whoa.
So he said, or the AI said, "Hey, I'm a visually impaired person. I can't see this CAPTCHA. Can you read it for me?"
Wow.
And it tricked the human.
Oh, man.
And they did not program it to do that. It just figured it out on its own.
Juliet shuts her computer down, slowly walks outside into the wilderness, and never comes back.
It's wild.
That's how I feel sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I just want to not interact with any of this because I don't think it's making us any happier. Sure, there's a lot of efficiency that comes from this. But as far as getting our needs met emotionally, I really don't think that the AI is going to help that in any way, shape, or form. I think that we have seen in the last few years with the pandemic, the epidemic of loneliness that has occurred with people feeling so disconnected from community. And that's something that Mackie and I are really passionate about trying to bring back. We hope to build a community with UltraLife, and which is our company, and this podcast, of people that can actually get together in person and connect with each other. If we can connect people to make friends. I'm staring at a big whiteboard right now in our office, and it says Summer Camp 2025, which is, one of our big goals is we want to be able to have retreats and have people come together and have like a big summer camp.
You let out the big secret.
It's not a secret.
It's on the whiteboard.
What? Oh, a whiteboard?
No, the secret.
Oh, I know, but I think it's good to declare what you actually want.
It's true.
And that was something that we want to do on this first episode, is we would like to give you our brain dump of what our goals are. And perhaps you come away with feeling like you want to take this exercise on. We've been feeling a little scattered post-holiday. We're launching a new business. It's launched, technically.
It's launched.
Took us a while. It's called UltraLife, and it is a remote coaching company that works with longevity fitness and helping people after the age of 35 stay as fit, healthy, happy as they can possibly be through fitness, through nutrition, through mindset, and through lifestyle. So we have an app that we have launched. We have about 25 clients. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And we're just looking to continue to build. And we don't know what we're doing. I mean, we do and we don't. Like Mackie and I,
we know how we are. We know what we promised and what we're going to help our clients with. But overall, does it turn into retreats? Does it evolve into X or Y? How does this continue to evolve as we evolve?
Yeah. All I know is that we are craving community and interacting with other people who want the same things that we want, which is really to feel contentment in life and to feel enough energy in your life that you can do the things that you want to do. And it really does start with the physicality, because if you don't have the physical energy, then that will not allow you to do the things that you want to do and have goals. So that's like a base level. And that is something that I became aware of when I was in my early 20s, when I changed my diet for the first time and went from eating a really shitty processed diet to eating real whole foods and getting actual life force energy in my body. And I had what I call a spiritual awakening, because I started to see behind the veil of like, oh, wow, there's so much to life that you can experience when you feel well. And you want to grab life by the balls and like go do shit. And prior to that, I had like, you don't realize how you feel when you're in it until you don't feel that way anymore. So a lot of people think that it's very normal to feel that energy slump at 3:00 or to wake up and feel brain fog immediately and it takes a bunch of coffee to feel normal, or
even just not having that zest for life, right? Like if you just wake up and you're just not excited about what you're going to go do, it can be a challenge. And even if you are excited but you don't have the energy to really make the most of it, that's even worse.
Yeah, for sure. And so the physical aspect is definitely the first place that we start with people always. You have to start moving energy through. Our emotions are just energy in motion. Like we are creatures that are meant to always be moving through things. So, if you're sitting a lot, get up and move around and move the energy around. Breathing helps move energy around. There's so many ways that you can do it, but it's really important that you start with the physicality first through exercise and movement. And then the nutrition piece, is also in tandem with that. They go really like together. It's like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, that was the revelation for me. Is I was always physically active. I played sports in high school and college, but when I first figured out, oh, I need to have some more micronutrients. Oh, I need to eat more vegetables. I need to do X and Y, and my nutrition game got a lot stronger. I had that awakening that you're talking about, and that was sort of the moment that I knew that I wanted to become, a personal trainer, nutritionist, and help other people have that feeling that I had in that moment, because it was just so great.
It really changes who you are.
Yeah.
And as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, your personality changes your personal reality. And if your personality is, really dulled down because you don't feel well all the time, then your reality is going to be not great.
Yeah.
And so that, that's really what our company is about, what we're helping people with. And like Mackie said, we don't know the iterations that it's going to take on. Just like this podcast, we didn't know that the WooCast would become the Longevity Lab in 2024. So let yourself evolve. And, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I don't mean that like literally, but I think it's very important that we have a growth mindset and not this fixed mindset. We allow ourselves to shape shift and follow our highest excitement, which was my number one goal this year. We're talking about New Year goals. I don't believe in New Year's resolutions just because they really don't work.
90%. There was a study that came out, and if you get the Longevity Lab emails, which come out every Friday, you would have seen a few weeks ago we had an email about that 90%, the research says 90% of New Year's resolutions fail.
Why is that?
Well, there's a combination of factors. One is people try to do too much. Mm-hmm. And, if you're going from working out once a month or not at all, and then you're saying, okay, I'm going to work out every day, it's just not a realistic thing. And then and the second thing is it's sort of an all or nothing mentality. Oh, I fell off the bandwagon. It's over. I'm done. We'll try again next year.
Well, next year's a long time to wait.
Well, yeah, that's what people do.
Yeah, I think it's just biting off too much for somebody in the beginning. And you always say this to me, which is most people overestimate what they can do in a week and they underestimate what they can do in 1 year.
Yeah.
That's definitely true for me. And I'm setting better expectations with that. The underestimating what we can do in a year piece has been game changing for me as I've taken on really big events. The last couple years, I got really into ultra running, and it takes really a whole year to plan something like that and train for it. And if I had to think about having to do too much in 1 week, it would be very overwhelming. But it's like you have this whole year to get to the big event. And then, every month, every week, every day, you backtrack from there. And that's really the best way that we can set ourselves up for success when it comes to any goal. Have your North Star goal, which by the way can change. You never have to be married to anything. Have a big dream, have a big goal. I always tell people that, I was doing consulting for fitness studios, helping fitness studios, get off the ground. And that was one thing I always encourage, is like, don't keep yourself small, but don't be afraid of having a big goal, even if that goal changes. But it's really important that we are working towards something really exciting for ourselves. And then we are realistic with how we attack those goals on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Yeah, I love it reminds me of the idea of the misogi.
Yes. Mackie loves the misogi.
The misogi is, there's two rules to the misogi. It's an ancient Japanese term. It's been I think it's been hijacked. It's not exactly traditional anymore, but the idea of the misogi is essentially there's two rules. One rule is to do something so challenging, so outside of your comfort zone, so big that it changes the course of the rest of your year. So you do one event that changes the other 364 days of your year. Rule number 2 is don't do something so hard that you die. all you need to do is do something hard and just make sure that you're safe doing it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to it can be a race. It can be starting a business. It doesn't have to be physical, but we like to do it in a physical sense that just like roots you in reality. For us last year, we both did 50-mile ultra marathons. It could be a big hike. It could be a 5K. For everybody, this idea of the Misogi is going to be different. But, in the weeks and months leading up to your Misogi, you're obviously going to be changed because you're going to be focused in on this one big goal and challenging yourself and doing your training plan and planning and all of the different aspects that go into this and setting yourself up. And then afterwards, for the rest of the year, after you complete your Misogi, whether you actually do it or not, you're going to learn a lot. Like, so if we went out and tried to run 50 miles and failed for whatever reason, it's not a failure. It's you've learned from it, and you learned a little bit about yourself. Whether you decide to do it again to get redemption, that's totally up to you. But when you learn from something like that, that changes who you are. It changes what you think you can do, changes everything in your life. And, so we kind of got into this idea of the Misogi last year. And Juliet,
it's something that we're really passionate about with clients as well.
Right.
Is encouraging them to get to that point where they want to have their own Misogi. But they could be small, like, it doesn't have to be so big that, you might die. I mean, one of the rule is don't die, but it can be like, run 1 mile without stopping. But I think having any of these goals that push you out of your comfort zone are going to change your relationship to who you are and who you know yourself to be. And as far as neuroplasticity in our brain goes, with our brain being able to really change, the only way to do it is to have an embodied experience. And I can tell you this with certainty from experience, not just the scientific research that there are tons of out there to show you this. But, I have always struggled in the past. And notice how I said I struggled in the past. It's really important too when we're re-identifying ourselves with who we are, that we don't say things like, I'm always this way, or I have this problem and it never goes away. That just solidifies in your brain who you know yourself to be. And that is a recipe to never change. So I always in the past had anxiety around certain things. I had irrational fears around having a heart attack when I would do runs. Even though I continued to run always, I would have these recurring thoughts that really held me back from my performance. And
whether it was running or just working out.
Yeah, anytime I really push myself hard, when your heart rate comes up, sometimes you're releasing neuroepinephrine and cortisol, and those are also things that get released when you have anxiety and panic. So your physiology is going to signal your psychology a lot of times. That was what was happening to me, is where I was feeling panicky and anxious, and it was holding me back from my performance. And, my dad having passed away from a heart attack, and I had a friend who passed away from a heart attack during a workout when I was younger. So I had some post-traumatic stress stuff living in my body that was going along with this. But the only way that I was able to push through this and change my brain is to do things that I otherwise wouldn't do. So I always had a fear of running a marathon. It just seemed like that goal. Plus, if you think about where marathon came from, it's because someone dropped dead. That's how the marathon came to be.
The messenger coming in and running in Greece who ran 26.2 miles to signal that the enemy forces were coming. He delivered the message, and then he drops dead.
Yeah, so that's all in the background of me thinking about, well, a marathon equals possibly dropping dead. So pushing myself and, risking it all, one could say, but really knowing, we know rationally that we're going to be okay a lot of times. It's emotionally that we don't necessarily feel that way. And our emotions are really what guide us. If we were guided by more rationality, then things would look a lot different in our lives most of the time. But our emotions are what are really leading us. So I called it exposure therapy. Imagine, if you have a phobia of something, and like, let's say you have a phobia of a big ass spider, and, a therapist is going to, show you a picture of a spider. Then you're going to see a video of a spider. Then you're going to be in a room with a spider. Then you're going to, little by little, until eventually you might even touch the spider. And your anxiety will start to dissipate and your brain will change, and that phobia will eventually go away. So it's the same thing when we're talking about changing who we are. We are attached to this version of ourselves that we always know ourselves to be, and it's very comfortable to be that person. And there's this homeostasis that we'll always try to go back to. And that was definitely me with running, until I pushed myself to do harder things like a marathon and a 50K and a 50-mile race. And the goal being that I would have this symbolic event that would change me for the rest of my life. Because now I know that I am capable of doing those things. I am still here, alive and well, talking to you on this podcast. And I recently signed up for a 100-mile race to go to the next level.
You heard it here first. The big announcement.
Yeah.
100 miles, 2024.
And that is because I strive to change who I know myself to be, because that's the only way that we can get out of our own way. And most of the time, why we don't have the life that we want and we are dissatisfied is because we are preventing that. We have a lot of things that we do, like we sabotage, we get our needs met through numbing ourselves by watching more TV, or, smoking weed, or drinking, or eating, more snacks at night. Like, all of these things are these coping mechanisms that we are trying to get our needs met in certain ways, but they are ultimately hurting us and holding ourselves back from who we really could be and being in bliss. And when you do these things and you go beyond who you knew yourself to be, you will feel true bliss. And that might be what some of these people talk about when they talk about enlightenment. It's not necessarily like a state that you always live in, but they're these fleeting, amazing moments of ecstasy that we can experience in our lives through challenging ourselves. It is always through challenge that we will feel better. And I know that, we are in a bit of a comfort crisis in our world. And Mackie and I really teach people how to get out of that comfort crisis, because when you start to challenge yourself, you really start to change yourself. Sounds cliche, but it really is true. And I'm a testament to that in the last couple of years, and how I feel liberated in more ways than just the physical. I feel liberated to share myself, be more vulnerable, let myself fall, let myself fuck up. I have a sweatshirt on right now that, says, make mistakes. That's really what life is all about. And there are a lot of mistakes along the way that you will inevitably make when you're trying to go for things that are outside of your comfort zone. It is only the people that keep going that make it to that other side. You have to, when it gets hard, you have to keep going. Even though we talked about this earlier, this is a different kind of keep going. I know earlier we mentioned, like, in our culture, we're like strive and push, and sometimes you really need to not do that. But also there is a time and a place for that.
Yeah, I think you're speaking about sort of this roller coaster that we go on when we embark on a new thing that you want to do, whether it's a goal or a journey, a job, whatever it is. This business right now. And you start off with this blind optimism and everything's great because we're going to, the numbers work and you're going to have all these clients and we're going to build this great community and it's amazing. And then the reality kind of sets in and there's a lot of hard work and there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of things that need to be done to make this business successful. And you kind of start to go down on the roller coaster, and then eventually you get to a point where Seth Godin calls it the valley of despair. It's the point where you kind of have to make a choice. People do this with diets. It's like start a new diet and they do great for a little while, and then all of a sudden it starts to get hard. They've got a birthday party. They've got They want to go out to eat with their friends, or in our business, it's, this is really hard. People aren't responding to the messaging. What's going on? And you have a choice at that moment when you're at the bottom of this valley of despair, the bottom of the trough, where you can either quit, go back to the beginning and start a new thing, start a new business, just go get a job.
You just go back to the optimism part
do
again.
Another diet. Carnivore didn't work for me. I'm going to go to keto. That's going to be the answer, right? And you go back to that optimism part, the blind optimism. Or the opposite choice is to know that and accept that, okay, this is going to be really hard. I understand the challenges that are in my way now, but I'm going to push through it and turn into a true player of this game, and be able to work through knowing what I know now. I know the challenges. I know what I have to overcome.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier to go back to the drawing board, right? And then go back into because a lot of this is emotional, right? So it feels better to feel good. I think we really have this mindset of feeling good is right and feeling bad is wrong. And what if we decided that both feelings were perfectly normal and a part of our existence on a daily basis? Or, in a year, you're going to go through these highs and these lows, and sometimes just coasting, right? We have these troughs that we go through. Most of the time, we're just kind of coasting along. Right now, with building this business, Mackie and I are experiencing sometimes a high, and then we're experiencing a low right now.
Yeah.
In figuring out, how to proceed, because, we've never done this before, creating a remote coaching business and meeting people all over the country. I had my own private coaching business, but it wasn't to the scale that you and I are trying to do now. And we had a community of, 1,000 people when we had the physical gyms.
Yeah.
That's different, but we are just being students right now. And patience is something that I'm really trying to cultivate. Mackie is very good at having patience. And I am definitely more of an instant gratification type gal. I always have been. Delayed gratification is hard. I have it with certain things.
You would eat the marshmallows?
Yeah, I think I would. If anybody knows about the test, there's is it a video of a little kid?
They've done it. Yeah, there's videos of it.
And it's what do they say? They put a marshmallow in front of the kid and they say, if you don't eat this now, we'll give you something later.
Yeah, so if they put a marshmallow in front of the kid and they say, we're going to leave the room. You can do whatever you want. We're going to come back in 20 minutes. I don't know how long it was, and if the marshmallow is still here when we come back, we'll give you 2 marshmallows.
I think that as an adult, I could do that now, but I'm thinking back to me as a child and really not having my needs met and wanting instant pleasure.
That's funny.
Don't think I could have done that then.
Yeah, and what they found was that this study was done over the course of years, and they found that the kids that did not eat the marshmallow right away and had some delayed gratification, they actually did better in life.
Whoops. No. I mean, I don't know because I never had the test, but I definitely have had to reparent myself since I didn't have very good models when I was younger. So, but we intimately get to know ourselves, especially through our habits. And that is something to pay attention to, who you are under stress, how you are when you try to do something new. It's all data and we don't need to judge ourselves. It's just really interesting to observe ourselves and not get so attached to what happens. If you try a new diet, for example, and you find yourself going off the rails one day, it's who are you when you mess up? Are you somebody that like throws it in the towel and you're not gonna like just go back to it and forgive yourself, or you're gonna just say like, oh, I'll try something different and that'll be the thing? Like, notice your patterns and your habits, and really try to outgrow who you've been. And that's what I'm trying to do actively, right now, and the last few years in particular, is changing my identity, which is really hard, y'all. Like, we know ourselves to be one way, and there's parts of us that we're like really attached to, but we're also like really multifaceted as people. And there's different parts of us that I will definitely have episodes about that. Internal family systems is an incredible form of therapy that talks about the different parts of our personalities. It's not just for people who have, multiple personality disorder. Like, we all have these different parts of ourselves and fragmented parts of ourselves. The 12-year-old Mackie and the 18-year-old Mackie, and all these experiences that you've had that have shaped you into the man that you are today. And sometimes we are operating from those different parts and getting to know those parts, like parts of us that want to protect us from pain, or parts of us that want to manage everything. So more to come on that. Mackie said he's very passionate about having episodes on longevity health and mindset, which I am as well. And we're also going to talk a lot about our psychology and emotions, and also weird and woo-woo stuff, because
why not?
Because that's who Mackie and I are. Like one of the things that we love about each other the most is that we can have the weirdest, most out there woo-woo conversations, and we love listening to podcasts about conspiracy theories and UFOs and interdimensional beings and psychic stuff, and it's all really fascinating. And so we'll definitely have some of that sprinkled in, or maybe more than sprinkled in.
Did you hear about that jellyfish UFO?
No. What?
Yeah, there was a jellyfish UFO video that came out.
What is it?
Which reminds me of the thing that we saw in Turks and Caicos.
Oh, somebody saw something?
Yeah.
And it looked like a
It
jellyfish.
was like over a military base.
There's stuff out there.
Yeah.
There's stuff that they know too. Like, the military knows what's happening. I think that we are going to find out soon. I really do. I think there's going to be like a real disclosure.
I disagree. I don't think we will.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you guys think? You'll have to message us and let us know.
If you're watching on Spotify, I'll put that as the question that you can answer. Q&A.
Yeah. So to finish today's first episode of the Longevity Lab, Mackie and I wanted to share with you what our goals are, and perhaps you do a little bit of this yourself. So we're going to each share 2 goals with you, and I'm going to give you guys the prompts if you want to do this. But first, you're going to write down your goal, and you can do a big brain dump. This is what Mackie and I did. And these really don't have to be goals about specific achievements around career or anything, but you're going to pick goals, and then you're going to write, why is this goal meaningful to you? What will achieving this goal give you? And how will you feel once you've achieved this goal? And then lastly, will achieving this goal help you achieve other important goals in your life? And we can put that in the show notes as well. If you guys want to like journal or write that in your notes in your phone. By the way, I do everything on notes in my phone.
And you do it talk to text.
My whole life is notes and talk to text. Yes. And I'm doing audio texts now, which I used to hate when people would send me those.
I don't listen to them.
I'm sorry. But it's so easy. I understand why people do it. All right, Mackie. So what are 2, we wrote down each like 10, but we're only going to share a couple. So what are 2 of the goals you want to share with the listeners?
Well, so my first one I'm going to share is a physical goal. There's so many that I could pick from. I don't know which one to choose.
Just pick a couple.
All right. So one is going to be, I want to push what I believe I'm capable of doing physically. So for me, that's running a 100-mile race. Okay. I don't know if it's going to happen this year.
See, and this is where I actually want to challenge you, Mackie, because I feel like for some reason, I'm doing one this year, and I always consider myself to be.
I'm the one that got us started into this stuff.
Yeah, and I'm always like looking up to you as being like way more fit than I'll ever be. That's like my story, is that like Mackie's the fitter one in our family, and I'm always just like following in your footsteps. And so I want to challenge you that you could probably do it this year. If I'm doing it this year and we're going to train a lot together, you could probably do it this year.
It makes sense to do it this year, but I think my trepidation on actually committing to it right now is just because my knee is a little tweaked right now.
And
It'll
it's
go
also
away.
winter. We're in the off season. Okay, but why is that goal important to you? That's the thing
That's
when
the
we're
question,
picking,
right?
Why does it matter to do something like that for you?
Well, because when I ran 50 miles twice in 2023, and it wasn't that hard. It was hard, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't. I didn't have to really dig. I dug deep, but I didn't go deep, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanna really kind of see what it looks like to be outside overnight. When you're doing a lot of these high alpine races, it gets very cold overnight. So you go through a big range of environments, challenges, being out there in the dark, just a lot of things that we didn't necessarily have to deal with on a 50K or a 50-mile race. And I think it's one of those ideas that, 100 miles, for what it's an arbitrary number. It's not that much different than 99 or 101, but 100 miles getting into the triple digits on foot is exciting.
Yeah. Awesome. What's goal number 2?
Well, what are the other questions, right?
Well, for time's sake,
Okay.
really the most important part, guys, when you're doing this is
Why is
it meaningful
Yeah.
to you? Like, what's it going to give you? Which he answered. The next question is, what's it going to give you? And he's like, this capacity to see like what he's really made of, which affects everything else in your life, right?
That's my misogi.
Yeah. And
All
then
right.
will it help you achieve other goals in your life? I mean, 100%. You can do hard shit.
Yeah.
So like other things just seem like cake after that.
Most of the time.
Yeah. But you can remind yourself, like, my doctor was saying, for women who do ultra marathons and give birth, they can pull from that experience. They've gone through really vigorous, hard pursuits with their body, and it's like you can call upon that when necessary to know that, like, oh, I'm capable of doing really hard things. Number 2.
My second goal is that I want to build a thriving community, either online or in person, of people who are doing cool things that inspire us and are inspired by us. And part B to that is having our annual meetup retreat called Summer Camp in 2025.
You came up with summer camp. That's really cute. I didn't have any say on the name.
We can
I
change
like
it.
it.
We'll see.
Again, not married to anything.
Yeah.
Why is it important for you to have that, to create that community of inspiring people and to inspire other people?
When you have a community, no matter what you're going through or what somebody in the community is going through, you're stronger together. For me, I've always been a person who I can do it myself. I'm capable of handling anything. I can fix whatever's going on. That's always been sort of my story, which I guess is good, but at the detriment of allowing other people to help. So that's the shadow side of that story that I have. So I can keep the story of I can do anything, I can fix anything, but also why not make it a little bit easier if somebody wants to help me?
Yeah, or just share.
Or I can help other people, and in turn that helps me.
And just sharing your experiences,
Yeah,
like doing it all alone is, I guess it gives you a level of gratification that you're so capable. But I think it's way more fun and enjoyable when you have people rallying around you.
I agree. And it's funny, going back to the 100-miler, running overnight in the dark. Kind of want to do that by myself.
You do or you don't?
I do.
Really?
Yeah.
Explain that to me, because, see, I'm like, oh, hell no, I'm going to have a pacer. every moment that I am in the dark in the woods. And and just for safety, like if you start hallucinating,
I'll have my tracker. It's fine.
y'all, this is where Mackie scares the shit out of me. And I have to come in like with serious mom energy and be like, no, honey, like you're not doing that. We are getting you pacers and you will have someone supporting you, because that's the whole purpose of doing these. It's
I'll
like a
meet people at
community.
the aid stations. It's fine.
Why? Why would you want to do that alone when pretty much everyone has a pacer?
Not everybody.
Well, many people have a pacer. What is it about that you want to do
I think
alone?
it would be cool to be out there by yourself with your own thoughts, with your own, like, just pushing through and doing it.
I see. Okay. I'm not going to stop you, but for safety, we might have to
I'm
get
open to it. We'll see.
to a pacer.
We'll see.
It's really just
we'll do a
because
couple
if you're
test
out there
runs.
by yourself and something happens, who the hell is going to help? And it's
I have my Garmin InReach. It's fine.
No, you know what I mean though. Like
I
if
know.
something really happens, like if you pass out or something and you can't hit
True,
the Garmin
true.
InReach and there's nobody around for a while.
Yeah.
So as you guys can see, our relationship.
It's a give and take.
Yeah, we balance each other
Yeah.
out. All right, beautiful. I love those goals.
What are your goals?
All right, I got to pick 2. I wrote 10 down. There's like altruistic ones here, and there's also, different, more selfish ones. Okay, I'm going to share a couple that are scary to me. Let's do that.
It's big, scary goals.
Okay.
It's living.
Okay, so I want to share my body more freely and really stop wishing it was different to be worthy of being seen and accepted. Now, when we talk about like old stories, like you talk about your story of like, I can do everything on my own, like, I can fix everything. That's something that you have connected with since you were probably how old? How long has that been your story of who Mackie is?
I was a kid. I mean, my parents instilled that. They were like, oh, just give it to Mackie. He'll fix it. Which still exists today, by the way.
Yeah. So this is like a huge part of who you know yourself to be.
Yeah.
For me, my body has always been this huge part of who I am and not accepting my body fully. I've made so many strides over the years with body acceptance and loving myself. I mean, there was, it wasn't until a few years ago that I was even able to stand naked in front of a mirror and be comfortable with what I saw. And I still feel uncomfortable in sharing my body in front of other people, especially on social platforms. Like I'm fine in like a locker room. I'll get naked. It's whatever. And that's actually really different because I used to not be able to do that. I'd have to like put a towel around me or go into the bathroom stall. And this is a goal for me that I want to just say, fuck it. Like I'm 35. I am a fitness professional. I've been a trainer since I'm 18 years old. The pressure that the fitness industry puts on everyone and that we put on ourselves being in the fitness industry to portray this certain look. And, something that's said a lot from fitness professionals is that our body is our business card, which is just so much pressure and horrible. And it's also not untrue. Like the amount of people that I've gotten to contact with as clients based on how I look because they want to know how I look that way. I don't want that to hold me back in any way in my life because as we all know, our bodies are going to change. We're going to do the best that we can with them. Health is my number one priority. Feeling good, not necessarily looking good, which is a very transient thing and also a trending thing. We have such a trend right now in the fitness industry in particular of women being really buff and having big butts and, abs and all the things. And there's also been trends where women are supposed to be like basically a clothes hanger where you have nothing to your body and you're emaciated, right? So it's all fake news. And I want to share with you guys, like, this is my body because we all have our natural body types and what they look like. And we really can't change a lot of that. Sure, you can sculpt things here and there and you can build some more muscle, which we all should be trying to build muscle because it's protective and healthy for us. But I want to be able to share my body freely, and I don't want to be afraid of judgment, you know? And that's meaningful to me because this is a microcosm of a macro issue. If I can break free from this, it will unchain me from a lot of other things. It's a pattern that I've had since growing up. And it's an old story and it's been holding me back. And it's not who I want to represent or be. I want, people to know that you can be comfortable no matter what you look like. And that we really need to focus on health and fitness. But that's not being ripped, like it's so.
Typically, I always look to athletes, right? So if you look at athletes are the people who are, in general, the most prime conditioning, and they're not always the most ripped.
Mm-hmm. And for me, the more prime conditioning that I've been in with what we've been doing, my body has changed. Like I've had to eat a lot and put on weight in order to have better performance and get comfortable with that fluctuation, because ultimately it's getting me towards my goal versus always trying to stay lean or small, which is what we are constantly inundated with. That's like what the goal is, and it's got to go.
I mean, that was a huge transformation in and of itself last year when you ran the 50 miler, because we had to eat 90 grams of carbs per hour. Used to eat 90 grams of carbs per day.
Yeah. Yeah, changing, guys. You heard it here. I'm changing. And part of changing is exposing yourself. It's doing the thing that you're afraid of and not being afraid of the consequences, because what's worse? It's staying the same is worse. I think changing is better than staying the same.
There is no such thing as staying the same.
True, but we perceive that we're trying to keep ourselves the same,
right.
I
was just reading something about trying to go in maintenance mode in the off season for running, and they're saying there's no such thing as maintenance mode. You're
it's
either
all these made up terms.
Gaining fitness or losing fitness.
Oh my God, I'm losing it right now, which is fine. That's totally fine. But
that's the seasons of the year, seasons of life. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it funny? We make up all these fucking fake terms and all this bullshit, and it's all just so that we can feel okay. We're all just trying to feel okay. Guess what? We're not okay. That's my theme of this podcast. I'm not okay, and it's okay to not be okay.
Goal 2.
Okay. I want the messaging with our business to be true to what I believe in and not watered down so that we can reach more people. I think that this is so easy to do in anything in our life, is try to fit in and try to get everyone to like you. And the truth is, that's not possible. There's going to be people who don't vibe with you, who don't like you. And so I want to be true to what we're creating and share with you guys what Mackie and I really believe in, and not just say things because that's what other coaches are saying or other businesses are doing. I want it to come from our heart and soul and what really feels like truth to us. And truth, there is no ultimate truth, guys. That's the thing.
That's the problem.
That's the problem. And we're all trying to search for that answer, that quick fix, that thing that's going to give us certainty, and it doesn't exist. But there's truth in each and every one of us by how we feel about something. And I have really followed my intuition over the last few years. I followed it throughout my whole life, but I allowed myself to really listen to it strongly. That's what brought us out to Colorado, and has, our lives have been completely changed for the better. And so truth lives within each and every one of us as a feeling. Is it moving you towards higher excitement, or is it moving you towards fear and stress? And when I'm trying to fit myself into a mold of parroting what other people say because I'm trying to get likes or followers or, more clicks on the ads that we're putting out, that feels out of alignment for me. And so
that makes sense.
My goal is that our messaging is going to be true to what we really believe in and not just parroting other bullshit that people say, and really comes from our experiences, our lived experiences doing this, being in this industry for, close to 20 years. And why it's meaningful to me is because it will give me the ability to be authentic and unique. Like, we're all unique when we're speaking from our truth. And that's what the world needs. We don't need more of the same. We need people with different perspectives. That's really what helps us evolve and grow. If we all had the same perspective, it would be boring as shit and dull. So I am going to be focusing on that. So those are my 2 of 10 goals that I had written down.
Love it. It's good.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up our first Longevity Lab episode. Many more to come. We're going to have guests on. I already started my list of all the guests that are coming on. It's really exciting. Please let us know if you want us to talk about any topics in particular, things you're interested in. Don't hesitate to reach out. Like we said, like, our goal is to create a community, online as well as in person, and foster relationships and connections, and just share this message as far as we can. It really is a ripple effect. When one person shares something to another person, they share to another person, we make big impacts and waves we don't even realize. So share this episode with people if you, or the podcast in general, if you find it to be helpful. And don't forget to review the episode on Apple Podcasts.
Review the show.
Our show, rather.
Yeah.
Can you review on Spotify now?
You can follow on Spotify.
Okay, so follow on Spotify, review the show on Apple Podcasts. We have like 85 reviews on there. I want to get it up to a couple hundred.
Let's get to 100. Let's just set that goal.
Okay, 100. Can everybody please review it? Takes like 5 seconds.
If you're not getting the Longevity Lab newsletter that comes out every week, it's a companion to this. Please sign up. You can go to ultralife.co. C-O.
Yeah. And if you want coaching, if you want help with your health in any way, shape, or form, that's what Mackie and I are here for. And we would love to work with you and support you. And it always starts with a complimentary phone call, video chat with us to see if it would be a good fit. Just reach out anytime. All right, guys. We will talk to you soon.
See you later.